Fervent Radio dives into the journeys of individuals fueled by their passions. Join us as we explore a world of fervent stories. In this episode, I'm joined by Rocio for a fascinating conversation about female sexual wellness. Her journey started a few years ago when she realized that there was a general lack of knowledge around this topic. Rocio's passion took shape through EYA, a project aimed at raising awareness about female sexual wellness. From uncovering the strong bond between sexuality and health to empowering a community of thousands of women and men, Rocio's story is nothing short of inspiring. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. And if this episode hits the right note, support the show by subscribing on Spotify and YouTube. Hi, Rocio. How you doing?
I'm good. Hello.
Thank you for being on the podcast.
My pleasure.
You come with a very interesting passion and topic, which is female sexual wellness. I think that not a lot of people know about. At least I don't think so. That wasn't the case for me. Definitely not. And yeah, I wanted to get curious about this topic. So I think the best way to get started is to have you explain what it is, first of all, and after that we can maybe go into how you became interested in this, why it became your passion, and so on and so forth. Sounds good?
Yes. So, I guess defining sexual wellness, it can be male and female, but just defining sexual wellness first is a good start. So, when people hear the word sexual or sexuality, they often think about one thing because that word has such a strong connotation. But sexual wellness is actually the connection between your physical, your mental, your emotional, and your social well-being. So all of these things are interrelated. We don't see them in silos, all right? And sexual wellness is basically having a healthy connection between all of those four different topics.
Curious to know, how you became interested in this, how you discovered this topic, and why it matters so much to you.
Mm-hmm. I'll start with how this came to be a pretty important part of my life. So the discovery part is related to how I was raised. Okay, so basically, I grew up in a very Christian household alongside with my sister, who's, by the way, my co-founder. And obviously, sex was a massive taboo in my family. There was no such thing as speaking about the birds and the bees, no such thing at all about that. So I oftentimes went to my sister to ask all of these questions, be it about sex, be it about tips and tricks, whatever. She was my go-to, and I felt very, very comfortable with her. And one day, basically, she told me that she had bought this vibrator, and she had left it on our nightstand. So in one of our houses, we have like a shared room, and we have this nightstand in the middle. And she told me that apparently our mom had gone into the nightstand and she hadn't noticed the vibrator. So it was quite funny, obviously, because if we would imagine our mom finding that vibrator, it would have been a total disappointment in her face or whatnot. So it was pretty comical. But at that point, we realized we had never actually spoken about masturbation. So it was kind of a light, or like a why. How come we've never spoken about masturbation? I've spoken to her about fitness routines. I've spoken to her about my latest like cosmetic routines, whatever. But how come masturbation, which we then ended up speaking about that night, was actually very part of our routine, our health routine? So that was the day that the concept of EYA, which is the company, was born. And essentially we'll talk about this now, but the whole company is related to sexual wellness for women. So yeah, that was a little bit of how it started. It's an anecdote that we often tell and often laugh about to this day.
With your sister?
Yes.
And were you able to eventually talk to your mother?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. So obviously, we had to break the news that we had started this company to my parents at some point. So I remember that we waited maybe like 2 years to tell them what we were up to. We gave them like an entire bottle of cava just to get them loose.
to help.
It's exactly to help ease the conversation topic. And we did tell them, and surprisingly, they were really okay with the idea that we were helping women with their sexuality, with education. When we told them that we were selling a vibrator, that was really shocking to them, and they don't resent us for it. Obviously not. There's no resentment. They're just kind of they want to be in the shadows about it, basically. So they don't ask many questions about how it's going. It's now and then she'll find, because obviously I have an inventory of vibrators everywhere in my house. So now and then my mother will find one and she'll just be like, okay. She once thought it was a rock, actually. So
Okay.
yeah.
That's interesting. So the taboo thing was not so much your parents or even your sister not wanting to talk about the topic, just it's not even identified as a talking point.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting. Meaning that, I guess, and that goes to why you started a company, that there is a lack of even knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started this company, and just to specify, because I think this is important and part of the purpose of the project, is that we started this in Spain. Right. So we could have made this company, we could have done all the education or the communication in English, which would have been easier in the sense that we feel very comfortable in English, and that obviously you can expand. It's more global. Everyone speaks English. So there was lots of reasons why we could have done it in English, but we didn't. Now, basically, what I noticed is that in Spain, there's still lots of taboo. So there's lots of my friends that have parents that are very much like my own, right? And that's very different to what I've seen in other households, because I grew up around the world because of my dad's job. And I remember my friends having very different conversations and attitudes towards sex or sexuality. So Spain is definitely the issue. My theory is, and I don't want to be quoted on this because it's a theory, this is not, there's no facts here, but I genuinely think that this is because we had Franco up until 1975, which was a dictator that was advocating for like a Catholic state. So it was very religious. So our grandparents and our parents have grown up in this type of, yeah, with these values, let's say, that were quite correlated to strong religion. Now, again, I don't want to be misquoted here. I'm not saying that religion and sexuality are completely, opposites or really fighting against each other. That's not the case. Not always. However, there is obviously a lot of taboo with masturbation because in the Bible, there's lots of passages where it explicitly mentions masturbation as being a sin, right? Because our body's the holy temple. Masturbating is sinful. So it like dirties our bodies. So obviously, if you grow up with this thinking, then masturbation feels guilty to you. And I actually know people, and only in Spain, that have confessed, like to a priest, after they've masturbated, which is crazy.
Nowadays.
Yes, nowadays.
Okay.
We're speaking about people that are very religious, because I do have friends that are very religious, but that for me is just wild. Like that's crazy.
That's not something you hear about. Like, first of all, someone confessing. I
Yeah.
don't have any friends that
Yeah,
who go
that's
to
true.
church
Yeah.
to confess. But yeah, confess about something that is related to what you mentioned, health, your mental, physical, and spiritual health.
Mhm.
Like, having interiorized the fact that this gesture or this action is a sin is pretty wide. I like the fact that you mentioned the upbringing and how it kind of started the idea for you to start the company and get involved in this space, let's say. Um, do you have, like, for example, key moments in your journey with the company or with the passion overall that could explain why that became such an important part of your life? You mentioned obviously the first conversation with your sister, but is there others? Also, do you have some figures, some people that guided you or that were really influential and helpful in this journey?
Definitely. Just thinking about the, let's say, milestones that we've gone through throughout this entire journey. I think the first one, um, this would be before we even started the company. So I actually launched a survey that I sent out to all my friends, my Spanish friends, and it went a little bit viral in like a couple of days. I think it was like 200 responses, which is just word of mouth, you know. So it's interesting. I actually went back to look at the survey itself. I hadn't seen it in years, so but because of this podcast, I wanted to actually find the survey and read out the responses and the questions. I'll read out the questions and then the responses. So, the first question is, do you feel comfortable speaking about sexuality or sexual topics with your friends? Okay, and only 50% of the women or the girls said they were comfortable speaking about this with their friends. Now, the second question was, how important do you think sexual wellness is for women? And this was a rating from 1 to 10. And the average answer was 8.8. Okay, so obviously very important. The third one is, how often do you masturbate? And around 63% said every week or every few days. And then the last one is, do you own a toy? And only half of the women owned a toy. So what do we find here? We can see that they clearly think that sexuality is important, right? They do masturbate, yet only 50% of them feel comfortable speaking with their friends about it or own a toy. Okay, the toy thing is a little bit less worrisome because obviously you don't need a toy, but the speaking to your friends or not feeling comfortable about speaking about such an important issue with your friends is it was, you know, it's very clashing. So obviously this disparity between the want and the need was a milestone because it let us know, like, okay, yeah, there's a reason why we want to do this, like there's actual purpose, and yeah, there's a clear need. So that was the first milestone, and it was very nice to actually go back to that survey and see it.
And just to specify, this survey that you sent out, was it only for your female friends?
Yeah.
Okay. And just to kind of expand on that, but has it also been a topic? I mean, female sexual wellness. I'm always struggling with it. Sorry about that. That can be also brought up in a conversation that doesn't involve only women. Like, for example, your male friends, maybe your boyfriend.
Definitely. Oh, I have a lot of my male friends asking me questions. Not, yeah, it's not only about female sexuality, but also about male sexuality. We're very different, males and females. So obviously, I wouldn't be the right person to speak to. But there's definitely some guidance that they've, I think, found very useful. I feel like these past few years, I've been kind of a sexual therapist to a lot of my friends. Again, both female and male. So yeah, I think they've been bringing it up. They feel comfortable speaking to me about it, probably because of this. Yeah, I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It's no, I just wanted to know if it was very um gender focused, in the sense that, okay, you can talk about it with your female friends because they can relate to it.
Mhm.
Because, to be honest, now that we talk about female sexual wellness, I don't know about male sexual wellness
Yeah,
either. So
that's a big thing.
yeah, and obviously nowadays you read a lot about porn addiction, especially
Hmm.
being such a, um, um, I wouldn't say public health or mental health issue, but very close to it, in the sense that there's so many now studies on how pornography for young boys and even boys in general completely transforms their perception of women, perception of their own, let's say, performances.
Hmm.
So, that, I guess what I want to say is there's also a gap for male sexual wellness there.
Oh yeah, but so much, and just like women have been repressed with, well, we've been repressed with a lot of, I don't know what the right word would be here. Let's just say we've been repressed.
Yeah, I think it's a safe assumption.
Yeah. Men have also been repressed,
Yeah.
obviously not in the same way, but emotionally they've been quite repressed as well, right? Because they haven't had any outlets to speak about issues with. They've always, as you said, like they've see all of these porn videos, they have a kind of idea of what they think it should be like. But then when it comes to, for example, performance issues or just feeling liberated with your sexuality, whatever, they don't, because they have these figures that they're looking up to, let's say, that obviously are false. Not false, but fake.
Yeah.
I would say. So yeah, definitely men, there's a huge gap there for men, very different to women, but I totally agree. And that's why I've had some of my male friends come to me with very, very personal, very intimate issues. And yeah, they have no one else to speak about this with because they don't feel comfortable speaking about this with their guy friends because they need to, as guys, I'm guessing you have a bit more of an ego with these subjects. So because in porn, as you know, there's always like, not all porn, but some porn, there's a stereotype for men. So definitely. And now and more, there's also companies, for example, such as Butt cater to men. Not in Spain, again, because we're so behind. Not that I know of, at least. I know there was for like 2 years ago, I remember in Gran Via seeing for the first time ever an ad for a male sexual toy. And I thought that was surprising. There was a company, but it wasn't Spanish. But anyways, I thought it was interesting that at least there was toys because, as you know, there's also not that many sex toys for men. Like, it's very limited.
I didn't even know that
Oh yeah, there is.
these toys
There is.
existed in the first place. But and I don't want to obviously deviate from the topic, but the constatation that you made of, for example, male or female women not being able to talk about masturbation and so on.
Yeah.
I've never talked about masturbation with my friends, as in, what does it make me, how does it make me feel, why do I do it, how frequently, how again, I don't want to generalize, but that's, and I don't think my friends have had these conversation with their friends, or at least we never talked about it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying, like, I'm not advocating here, or I don't think that sexual wellness is only being able to speak about masturbation with your friends. Obviously, that it's feeling comfortable too if you want to.
Yeah.
It's more about that. For me, like, what I'm feeling comfortable to speak about sexual wellness for men and women, it's, for example, if you have issues in your partnership, let's say, to feel comfortable speaking and discussing those issues with people of your same sex because, you know, they may be going through the same thing. Sexual dysfunction, for example, is a very, very good it's a good example because do you feel comfortable speaking about your male friends about, I'm not saying you have one, but if you had a sexual dysfunction, would you feel comfortable speaking about your friends for advice?
Yeah. I don't think the answer would be yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's more realistic. It's not just masturbation, because masturbation can obviously be very personal. But the point is that if you wanted to, you can. You know, it's just it's more a matter of not feeling judged.
There's a safe space for you to
Exactly.
express
There's a
yourself.
safe space. Yeah.
Totally. That's very interesting. And I guess like that's also taking like a learning that I take immediately from our conversation, because just the fact that we talked about that, I identify that there's no such thing as me, for example, tomorrow, if I were to experience such issues, I wouldn't know
What to do.
what to do. So very interesting. The initial question was like about the milestones, and you said that there was more than one. What were the others other than the survey that you sent out?
Yeah, so the survey was the, let's say, initial push, and then the second milestone would be launching the community. So we spent months of prep and research, obviously, trying to find educational content to share, and also creating a brand whereby the storytelling that we were doing with this education was compelling and also different. Once we actually created Instagram and started to build the community, it was probably the most important part of our journey because there we had validation, right? So there we started to get a lot of traction from, from something quantitative like getting followers to getting actual messages from women saying thank you and actually sending us questions because they're really interested. So that was definitely the second milestone, creating the community and seeing that this topic was validated by women or people. We also have some men, by the way, that follow us. Very important.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
And then the third milestone, let's say final one, was officially opening the company. So, like you go to a notary, you sign the contract, etc. So in Spanish we say es un SL. And that was basically the point where we went from having a project to having a company, right? So that was, we actually had a business about sexual wellness. So it was very empowering to say that we have a business just about sexual wellness and helping women. It still is to this day. But yeah, I would say that's the last milestone where that was really key in this whole these last couple of years.
All right. So just to have an idea of when that happened, when did you officially launch the company?
I can tell you right now because if I remember, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but let me tell you now. Yeah, it was the 15th of July of 2022. But this is where we officially signed the contract to start the company. We had already started Ella, the community, maybe like a year or two before that, maybe like something in between. Because we're coming up to 4 years the project.
Okay. So it was almost like the fruit of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's actually why I was at my parents' house with my sister. It was I think it was the pandemic, because I was living in Paris at the time, so I was spend some time with them at least. Only good thing to come out of COVID, maybe.
Yeah, one of those things.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know if with your sister the idea of launching a company dedicated to female sexual wellness was obvious, or you had different plans at first?
Oh, we definitely had different plans at first. My sister was still kind of reserved at the beginning of this of the project because I had initially come up with the idea of the vibrator very, very early stages. Obviously the idea stemmed from that conversation, so it makes sense that it was part of my vision. So we it was good because my sister and I are quite different and very similar at the same time, but it was good because we balance each other. So yes, she and I had lots of differences when approaching the company, but it wouldn't be what it is today if that hadn't happened. So for example, the vibrator, it actually took us like 2 years to launch that. Well, as you saw with the company. It took us like 2 years because we did so much background for that, like talking to so many suppliers, doing tests, going to our friends to do tests as well, talking to specialists about the actual material that were being used, going to like lawyers to see if it's regulated in the it was a lot. So that finally happened, but it did take a long time. My sister did definitely have friction at the beginning of it.
Which is part of every business project or even project,
Yeah.
not necessarily business oriented. And to maybe give the big picture to whoever's listening, the company EIA is educating the community or the customers, let's say, on female sexual wellness and selling actual vibrators, right?
Yeah. So the way that we explain the mission of the company is that we provide women both tangible tools and intangible tools to learn about their sexuality and improve their sexual health, right? So obviously the intangible tools is the education that we're providing. And the education, there's a key point here because this education is not education that we provide or deliver. We collaborate with different women in the sexual space, and people think it's only sexologists, but it's not. So, for example, something very important in the intangible piece is that we collaborate with other women in the space. Now, when we say women, we mean other professionals. And people tend to think that it's only sexologists, but it's not, right? The whole point of sexual wellness is that there's many different things that affect your sexual wellness that you might not be aware of. So, for example, we speak to, or part of our community of professionals that help us are pelvic floor specialists. We have endocrinologists which are hormone doctors, gynecologists, sleep experts, etc. So the whole point there is that we're delivering intangible tools, but through different spaces to help the women that follow us understand that, these are all interrelated. So that's one very, very important piece. And honestly, it's been super satisfying to be able to speak to all these women because they're super passionate about their own fields within it. So that's been awesome. The second tool was obviously the tangible tool, which is the vibrator. And in our plans, we wanted to do more than just the vibrator. The vibrator, which is the kickstart, because obviously it's a very clear tool that you should use to understand your sexuality and your health. But we had many other ideas as well, like, for example, for your menstrual cycle, there's different ways to heat pads, not like the classic one with hot water, but something that's a bit more, it's easier. So there was other ideas that we had and that maybe one day we'll be able to release. But yeah, the tangible tool as of now is the Coco, which is our vibrator.
All right. I think we'll keep that for later. But the question I have now is, so we mentioned the milestones and how the journey evolved over time, over the past 4 years or so. Any inspiring figure that really you either met or you read about and you were like, wow, this is a very insightful take on the topic, or this person really opened my eyes?
Yes. There was quite a few. I'm not gonna lie, because obviously as you start researching about it, there's a few things that come to mind. But one that stands out was actually a TED Talk that I listened to by an artist called Sophia Wallace. She's a contemporary American artist and activist. So she created a project called Cliteracy in 2012, which focuses on raising awareness about the clitoris and also challenging the cultural ignorance surrounding female sexual anatomy and pleasure. So in particular in this TED Talk, and if you want, I can link it to you after because it's really interesting. She speaks about the project and she also unveils a lot of jaw-dropping facts, which I'll share too for whoever's listening. So, for example, it wasn't until 1998 that an Australian urologist called Dr. Helen O'Connell actually mapped out the full anatomy of the clitoris. So we didn't know how the clitoris really looked like up until 26 years ago. So basically, like,
That's mad.
it's insane, right? It's crazy.
And you know why? Is it because we didn't have the tools, or
No, it's
there
definitely
was just a
there was just lack of
interest?
interest. It's been all male doctors,
Makes
really.
sense.
So
Yeah.
they're not interested in the clitoris. The clitoris, the only function it has is pleasure, nothing else. So
Wow.
why would they be interested in that? I don't know. The second one is that the Latin translation for vagina is spear holder. I don't think any further comment is needed here, but that's pretty wild. So yeah, these type of things really open my eyes to how much misinformation there is out there, and also why me as a person, like a big goal or purpose that I can have is to actually educate properly. So she was definitely an inspiring figure, and she actually follows us on Instagram.
Cool.
So that was a very big fangirl moment.
Big
Yeah.
achievement day.
Yeah, exactly.
I can imagine. Did you have the chance to speak to her in private?
No, I don't think so. I'm not sure if I've spoken to her by maybe like direct message on Instagram. She's liked quite a few of our posts, but I don't think I've reached out to her like directly. I mean, maybe I've sent her a fangirl message. I don't know. I would have to look, but no, I haven't spoken to her.
Okay. No, I was just curious about that. So really, really, like what we can already understand, or what at least I understand from our conversations, the fact that you saw it with your own experience, with your friends, the fact that there is not even a door to kick in where you can talk about these topics, but not just only your own experience, but overall, there's a huge lack of, well, there was a huge lack of interest, knowledge, and a big deal of spear holder kind of cliches
Yeah.
of that sort.
Pretty it's just about the patriarchy. I mean, that is it doesn't it sounds bad, but it really does have an effect that we're seeing now. Like what these facts I just mentioned, there's a direct relation. So yeah.
We could argue as well that maybe Franco being a man, that also explained why in Spain there was a conservative, already a conservative ideology, but maybe if we had had a female dictator, maybe.
Like, it
I
could have
don't
been
know.
different.
Don't quote me on that either, but you know,
It
like
could have been
connecting the
different.
dots, trying to connect the dots at least.
I mean, I think she would have at least been a bit more empathetic. Though, again, I think the big barrier there is religion.
Yeah.
That women, yeah, obviously they would understand more. I guess they would be more empathetic. But if they're a dictator, I don't know.
Yeah, that's always
Hypothetical
hard
situation.
to predict
Yeah,
the
exactly.
behavior of a
Exactly.
dictator, male or female.
Yeah.
I guess, well, my question that I usually ask at that point is how to illustrate your passion for the topic, but it's kind of obvious that starting a company is a really big materialization of your interest for it. Is there any other endeavor of yours that connect to female sexual wellness?
I mean, yeah. So of course the company is the biggest way, I guess, to represent my passion. Um, this is obviously related, but just the fact that my friends come to me with a lot of issues, and I've helped a lot of friends personally with issues like this. This has nothing to do with the company, even though it's related to it. So I also think that has to do with my passion because I really want to help them, either by, I don't know, giving them a certain book to read, depends on the issue, or just letting them vent out because I have not had someone to talk about this with. So yeah, and I really enjoy it. Obviously, I'm not an expert. And I always start with this. If you're coming to me, no, I'm not a sexologist. I don't have a university degree in it. I've read a lot. I've researched a lot, but I'm still not an expert. But I still just really, really enjoy it. And I'm really happy that people feel comfortable speaking about it, even strangers. It's really interesting. Yeah. I mean, I guess when they ask you what you do and they ask about the company, then they start asking me questions.
Yeah.
But it's really like people have a big need to open up and talk about it. Like I'm telling you, I've had like 5 a.m. conversations with people like at some party, and they're just telling me super personal stuff, and I'm like, okay, and I'm just like they're helping them. Yeah, it's really yeah. I don't tell anyone, by the way. Those secrets die with me. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's a big need. Yeah, I forgot to mention one thing just about the passion piece, like what drove me here. I truly believe it's a human right for everyone to have a healthy sexuality. And that means to really understand why and how your sexuality affects your health. So, obviously, we've been speaking about this throughout this podcast, right? There's a lack of information from an educational perspective, especially for women, because it's been quite repressive. But this is really important to mention because it's also a big thing that pushed me to open this company. It even goes to the extreme whereby women are stripped away of their sexual health altogether. So, for example, UNICEF released this report that over 230 million girls and women worldwide have undergone female genital mutilation. So this is literally where they cut out your clitoris. And there has been a 15% increase since the last data set. So that was a few years ago, which is wild. So my passion for this topic also comes from women being able to take care of their sexual health without being stigmatized, which is what we were seeing in Spain, right? But also forced, which is what we're seeing with these women that are literally getting mutilated. So yeah, that's a very important thing to also mention. Like one of the ideas that we had with the Cocos, for example, was to give a certain percentage to donate it to these organizations that work with and help with female genital mutilation.
Do you know where this happens, or and where it does happen? For what reason? Is it religion? Is it you mentioned patriarchy? Is it maybe a mix of both?
Yeah, it's usually something religious or spiritual. They tend to do it to like little girls when they're very young, and they don't do it with any medical help. They literally just get a knife and boom, just and obviously that implication is that it has so many health issues for them in the long term. They could die in the moment, obviously, but in the long term, there's so many health issues from having your clitoris just removed like that. And yeah, so for example, I know that the congregation of where it's happened a lot has been in Africa throughout the continent. Mostly, yeah, in small tribes that are very, very religious. I can't pinpoint exactly what religion it is. But yeah, the whole point is that removing your clitoris, apart from now never having the right to pleasure, just has so many health implications along the way. And there's personal anecdotes that we've received on AYA where people are dealing with this. So it's not that far. Like, this is something that maybe you might not know someone, but maybe you know someone that knows someone that this has happened to. So yeah, it's very concerning.
Yeah, so basically how Aya not only connects from your passion, but has a way deeper meaning, which is you seeing this as human right and being your contribution to the fight.
Yeah, definitely. This project is not to make money. It never was to make a lot of money. We never looked for investment, like exterior investment for this. It was purely purpose driven.
Yeah.
And we've learned so much over the years, and we've helped a lot of women, which is that was the whole point. That is the whole point.
The vehicle for the help that you wanted to provide was the company, and what we talked about before, the educational part, sorry, and the actual product, at least one of the product. Okay. That's one question I like to ask people that are passionate about the topic is, on the one hand, something that is considered or widely accepted as right or true, but once or as soon as you start delving into the topic, you realize that it's absolutely not the case.
Yeah.
What would be that one thing, or several if you have more?
There's quite a few, and it's by personal experience and just things that we hear and that we've been taught. For example, I mean, I guess I would start to just give facts that people think that are true, or in the past people have thought that are true, that are just not true. The first one that comes to mind is that it has been said that women that orgasm through penetrations have better orgasms. So, well, we can assume this has been made by an insecure man, because of course they would want the penis to be responsible for the woman's pleasure, obviously. But even Sigmund Freud said that vaginal orgasms were mature and clitoral orgasms were inferior. You can imagine. And he would tell this to his patients. He would say that you would in order to reach sexual maturity, you need to have a mature orgasm, which is through penetration. The fact is that the clitoris is made up of over 8,000 nerve endings, and the majority of the clitoris is actually internal. In other words, it is inside and you cannot see it. So when a woman reaches an orgasm through penetration, it's usually the clitoris still at play because of the friction, right? So again, it's not the penis. Really, obviously it's contributing to the pleasure, but most likely it's because of the friction that's happening outside. So there's no, these vaginal orgasms are usually actually still clitoral orgasms, essentially. So yeah, that's a very important thing that I want also a lot of women to realize, that it's totally fine that you're not orgasming through penetration, because only 15 to 25% of women actually orgasm through penetration. The rest need really, really direct stimulation to their clitoris. And that's something I wish I would have known when I was younger, because obviously you feel really guilty because you aren't orgasming through penetration like you see in the movies, or back to that porn that we were speaking about. So you have this expectation, and the guy also thinks that he's doing something wrong. And it's not. It's just not how it works biologically. But now obviously there's so much more education about that. So that's a very good thing. We've helped women realize that they're normal. It's totally normal.
Just kind of a sidetrack here. From your perspective, the research you've done about female sexual wellness, and obviously us too having been born in the 90s, do you think that kids nowadays have a better access to this knowledge?
Yes, they definitely do. Obviously, they have so much more, like they have so many more resources. They can use the internet to find anything and everything, but also there has been a lot of movement to help educate children better. Like, for example, in our textbooks, did you ever see the clitoris as part of the anatomy? You only saw the vagina. Like, it was only, and vagina is only the inside, right? The whole thing is vulva. And we've never seen it as vulva. So now kids are actually taught properly that it's vulva and the inside is vagina and there's a clitoris. I saw this in my little sister's book as well when she was taking sex ed. So yeah, I do think that there's some improvements that kids are receiving now. And obviously, at some point you and I will become parents or not, but we'll have so much, our values and our understandings is going to be so much better than our parents.
Yeah.
So they'll obviously be more educated, more woke on it.
Yeah, which is a good thing.
Definitely. Definitely. We don't want whatever has happened to women in the past centuries to happen anymore.
Do you have another one that?
Yeah. And this is something I've heard lots of times from my guy friends and also my girlfriends, saying that the more sex a woman has, the more loose her vagina is. So this is crazy. Okay, the vagina is a connective tissue. It's a muscle, okay? And it's very elastic. Think about it. You have to give birth. It's very, very elastic. So yeah, this elasticity allows it to, just like a muscle, to expand and contract. So after penetration or after even giving birth, it'll go back to its original state. So the fact that people think that because you've had, I don't even know what type of size penises they think that they're having, because obviously, like, that's not going to contribute to a woman being loose. It has nothing to do. The only factors that can contribute to you losing the elasticity of your vagina is hormones, obviously, age, and childbirth. But just with the childbirth, because I don't know if someone listens to it and they're worried, you can do lots of exercises to help your pelvic floor go back to its original state. So that's fine. But it's a muscle. So you have to think of it as a muscle. Doesn't matter how many people you sleep with, your vagina is not gonna become loose. False news. Fake news.
Do you know where this misconception comes from?
But again, because, it's been so shunned for women to have sex with a bunch of guys, and then when it comes turn to them having sex with this girl that slept with a bunch of guys, it's like, oh, she's not worth it. Or like, it's not as good anymore because already so many guys have had her.
Yeah. Like a devaluation
Exactly.
of the body.
Like a devaluation of the body.
So that it's a way, the way I see it is, it's not enough to say to women, or at the time back then, you cannot have this sexual freedom to have sex with a bunch of as many people as you want, because you're free to do so. But that's the moral point.
but then there is like the punishment that if you break this moral vow, there will be a consequence on your physical appearance. Is that it?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good way of putting it. And uh, again, like it's very shocking that I hear some of my own friends speak like this, and I have to educate them. Like actually, I made a post about this on an AA, and I had to send it to like a few of my friends. I was like, "This is very wrong, and I want you to read about this because obviously you cannot go around saying these stupid things. Like it's ridiculous."
Just to understand also, so we've covered the misconceptions, what they are, like these two misconceptions, how they've been formed over the years. um I'd be interested to have your point of view on why some of your male friends, guy friends, still have these ideas. Do you think there's some provocation in there, or it's just I've heard that thing before, I'm gonna repeat it like a parrot?
Yeah, it could be that. Again, it's just lack of. I think it's lack of education. They genuinely think that that's how it works, and so they've made up this concept in their head that if it's a girl that they know has slept with a lot of people, that they probably have the sense they have less sensation or whatever. So it's actually it's kind of like placebo effect because that's just not really how it works. But I think it's what you're saying. It's having have heard it from someone else, so then they kind of repeat it, and then just them straight out not knowing that that's just not how it works.
It's mad. It's kind of twisted how these lies or these misconceptions come to be so widely accepted and yet have absolutely no uh, grasp with reality,
Yeah.
with physics, with biology, mental. Okay, so that were the misconceptions.
Mhm.
Now I would like to hear from you what is true but overlooked. So something that you know is definitely there and yet not so many people know about.
Yeah. So I think something that we all know, for example, is that women love oral sex. Like this is, I think, everyone kind of knows this. And oral sex is crucial for women. We call it foreplay when really it should just be sex because it doesn't need to be foreplay. Foreplay again is leading to the fact that penetration is the main character. So it doesn't have to be like that. So the way that I like to explain this, we'll put it as a truth, I suppose, is that if you want like women work like an oven. Okay, if you want to cook something and you want it to be good, you need to preheat the oven, make sure it's warm enough, and then realizing that this preheating includes everything. So it's not just the oral sex itself. I'm not even saying penetration. Like it's everything. It's including the kisses beforehand or doing something that your partner that you'll know that she or he will like. So it's all of this. That's turning on the oven and letting it heat up. So part of that is very strongly advised to have oral sex because it's just this is something that I have heard all my guy friends speak about. I know all my girlfriends speak about it. So this is a truth that we all know, but I just want to emphasize how important it is in that it's not just oral sex, it's everything, right? It's more than just what we think about as sex. It's really all the intimate moments that lead up to the whole journey, let's say.
Okay, I had no idea. So would you say that we should not, how can I explain, rank the different moments of sexual activity? I don't know
Yeah,
how to
exactly.
describe it, but that we should consider this as a whole rather than, okay, I'm going to start with this, then that, then this, and I'm also going to be very clear on what is sex and what is not sex.
Exactly. Because that also devalues other ways of getting pleasure, right? We just spoke about women that most of them don't orgasm through penetration. We call sex only penetration. So it makes the other parts of it feel devalued. So that's why it's so important to take the other other activities into consideration and put them on the pedestal as well, because they're very important. It also helps women embrace their sexuality, because they feel like, oh, okay, yeah, this is how we're intimate. It's not just penetration.
Yeah.
So you can feel satisfied and say, yeah, I feel pleasure when having sexual activities or intimate moments with my partner. And you don't feel guilty saying that, because it's the whole thing that you feel pleasure in. It's not just the penetration, which maybe you don't feel as much pleasure in. So, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm saying, like, women and men work differently in this sense. We get turned on differently. So women, we need to feel like the most important variable for a woman to unlock feeling pleasure is feeling safe. Okay, so that's why it's so important, and that's why I kind of made this metaphor that women are an oven, because you need to do small things and many things to make her feel comfortable, for her body to feel safe. And then that's where you start to let loose, and then you can really start to feel pleasure. So that's why small things are so important, like small intimate things, not just penetration.
Yeah.
Oral sex, very important though, I will say.
Kind of to put it in a nutshell, and to just also validate if I understood correctly, what you're saying is, back like before, there was pretty much one path between you and your partner and pleasure, which was this first step, then the second step, and the ultimate step being sex, penetrational sex.
Yeah.
Now you have dozens of different paths where you can decide to only do oral sex, maybe before preheat the oven if you want, and ensure that the starting point is a safe environment, and that now you basically have the choice, as long as you can have an open conversation with your partner.
Yeah, definitely. That's also very important, communication with your partner. You need to be very transparent and also know how to say things and when.
So we talked about your passion transforming into, or developing into, a company, or at least that's how you decided to materialize your passion, and how it would help your friends and other women that you would talk to. Do you think that, or do you recommend that someone who's passionate about a specific topic turns this passion into a job or a venture? What is your take on that?
It's a hard question. I think you should always work on your passion. There is no doubt about that. If you have a passion in something, definitely pursue it. However, I think you need to be smart about how you follow that passion. So I always think, okay, if you have a passion, start it as a hobby that maybe later becomes a side hustle, that maybe later becomes a job. But the idea of, oh, I'm super passionate about this, I am going to quit my job and I am just going to start this venture, I don't think that's a good idea. I say this because obviously there's so many, there's a huge bureaucratic system in place that is very hard to overcome. So if you don't have the right tools, you won't be able to overcome. So then you'll just be super dismotivated in your passion. So I always say the same thing to all my friends that want to open a business with their passion. I always say, look, you need to find something that you're very good at. So, for example, a company or something that gives you money. Work on your passion on the side. Okay, so work either as a project, or you're doing small side hustles, whatever. And until you've really mastered your passion and you have enough money, because look, you can have as much passion in the world, but if you don't have money, you're just, this is a realistic sense of it. You can't do anything about it. So exactly. So get money from something that you're very good at. Always work on your passion on the side to develop skill. And then once you're ready, once you feel comfortable and you have enough capital, then jump for it. But this illusion of having an idea and then, jumping into the open water and hoping that you're going to be fine, I don't recommend that. I see that from personal experience and just seeing some of my friends that have made this mistake. It can go well, by the way. There's some people where this does happen, and that's just kind of 1 in a million. You never know. So that would be my advice. For example, my child has come to me and asked me about something like this. This is what I would tell them.
Makes sense. And that's also what you've done. You've
Yeah.
kept your job and you've kept working on AI on the side.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. It's been hard work.
I can imagine.
It's been hard. But yeah, I think it's also very motivating because I think it's very important for everyone to have hobbies.
Yeah,
You know,
totally agree.
we really need to stimulate our brains with other things. And just for example, if you're working at a company,
Yeah.
I love my job at my company. Like, I work in tech. I love it. Like, I find it very interesting. But I would not be able to only have that in my life. That would be just so unfulfilling.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, just like in terms of different things that have maybe not anything to do with one another, or just because you want to or you don't feel stimulated enough at work, which tends to happen quite a lot, unfortunately, and you want to explore something new on the side or something
Yeah.
that is going to be creative, that's going to bring you new knowledge.
Yeah, and just new expertise, like in general, because you only work on the same kind of skills in your, let's say, 9 to 5. Just put it away. So it's good to work on different skills that you might need for something else in life. Who knows? I will say though that, well, the overwhelming part, which is the one of the questions you were gonna ask me, like over these past 4 years, it has been a lot. Like, I am a person that has a lot of passions. Like, I have lots of different hobbies. But these last 3 or 4 years, for example, I've been having my job in tech. Then I have my sexual wellness company, and then I also DJ, like, as a hobby, which takes a lot of time. It's like, you know how it is, like digging music, practicing, etc. So that has definitely been overwhelming, having to balance those 3 things out over the last couple of years. So there are some downsides to wanting to pursue all your hobbies. I guess I recommend to just focus on one.
Yeah. Well, you covered the last question I had for you, like how it could become overwhelming, which is kind of a logical consequence of having basically 3 projects
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, but I would like to ask you about not necessarily overwhelming in terms of time, but maybe overwhelming in terms of mental, emotional charge. Let's put it that way. Like,
Yeah.
one day where you were focused on Aya and or female sexual wellness, and you felt, wow, that's heavy.
Yeah, that was gonna be the second thing, because time is obviously something in the end that you can manage. There has been moments with Aya, because obviously we have a way for the women to reach out to us for help, and we've received some messages from women before that are very, very personal and just very, very sad to read. And the fact that that's someone's reality and they're asking you for help feels like a lot of responsibility, because again, like, I'm not a sexologist, I don't have a research PhD or anything like this. So that responsibility has been overwhelming in the past. Um, and also realizing that some women have it really bad, you know, and like, this is it's not something you hear about. This is someone actually coming to you and asking you for help. But hopefully, like, luckily, we've had these collaborators that I was mentioning before that we basically relay them to, so they get professional help. But yeah, that definitely has been. There's been moments where it's been overwhelming in that sense.
Hits you in the face with reality.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I can imagine.
makes you feel very privileged as well.
Yeah, like grateful for what you have, and well, I hope these persons got the help they needed.
Yeah, I mean, we tried as much as we could, and hopefully, yeah.
I think my last and final question is for you to tell me and tell us a bit more about what is your perspective on female sexual wellness. We talked about human rights. Maybe we could just like narrow it down to women's rights. how do you see the space, let's say, evolving, or at least your passion for this topic?
Yeah. So obviously, there's been lots of positive advancements over the last years. Just for example, in Spain, again, to go back to Spain because this is our reference point. But, you know, I've had my Spanish friends buying their first vibrators, so that's very positive. There's some sex positive ads I've seen in the metro, which will have never have happened like 10 years ago. And there's big companies such as Plátano Melón that have thrived. So it's a company that sells different sexual toys. So there's definitely lots of positive advancements in let's say the right direction. Um, for me, the only thing is that, and this is a consequence of being suppressed because you always tend to go to an extreme, right? So I feel as if a lot of the messaging that has been provided in, let's say, this direction that we're going is quite rebellious. It's quite, yeah, I think extreme would be the word to describe it as. So we're advocating this rebellious behavior over education, I feel sometimes. So what I mean is that the message can be like, let's do everything, and this is why you should try this and that. And you see that a lot in, for example, some of the educational, well, not educational, but some of the posts that some of these sexual brands exist are posting. It's very, very loud. It creates a lot of noise. And I think it's great if that's what you want, if you want to try everything and do everything. But I also feel that pushes some women away because it adds more anxiety and pressure to them. So I think like the way I see some of these sexual messages is like 1,000 exclamation marks in pink, like something so loud. And again, that's just a consequence of it being suppressed for so long. So you go to the extreme, which is being very, very loud and noisy about it. But I think that the right messaging is just to go a bit more internal, and it's not really about telling what people to do, but why. Give them the tools for why they should do this, why you should take care of your sexuality, not try this or that, I think that's the messaging that I am hoping to see now more. We're overcoming this like very extreme now a little bit. There's more sexual wellness that are more just more neutral. It's more about education that's coming into the market, not in Spain so much. Like really, apart from AI, I don't know that many brands that have the same type of messaging. So that would be my conclusion there. Going in the right direction, but at the same time, maybe too extreme, too fast. I think it's about really giving people tools to explore themselves and more advocating self-love rather than
No, repeat.
try.
Yeah. Yeah, do this now. Yeah. Trying not to repeat the same mistakes that were made before with the path that, like, okay, there is only one path. Well, yes, we should it's hard to make the case for now advocating for a different path, but being on the same kind of ideology of this is the right one, as opposed to offering the framework where there is a multitude of different paths and you're free to choose the one that suits your desires, and these desires can change over time, I guess.
Definitely. That desires can change over time is definitely, your sexuality is always changing.
Yeah.
Always changing. Your sexuality, what it was like when you were 15, is definitely not the same as what it's today. And that's also very important for people to understand and accept.
I think just kind of reflecting on the whole conversation, we've got so much more to learn from this women, men,
Yeah.
everything,
All of
everyone in
us.
between.
All of us. There's just, like I said, now it's starting to come to the light that we need to be educated on this because it affects our health.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, just an example of you suddenly are having painful sex and you think it's because, and this is what you've been taught, right? Oh, my partner maybe isn't turning me on. Maybe I'm not attracted to my partner anymore. Totally could not be the case. It totally could just be that, hey, your hormones changed. That's affected your pelvic floor. You just need to work on your pelvic floor. and it has nothing to do with it. So little bit by little bit, you have to deconstruct these these ideas that we've made and these assumptions that we jump to.
The number one idea is that we don't know not anything, but we know way less than what we think we know about sex. Rocio, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. And if this episode hits the right note, support the show by subscribing on Spotify and YouTube. Fervent Radio dives into the journeys of individuals fueled by their passions. Join us as we explore a world of fervent stories